Hi, everyone. My name's Beth. I think we've all met before because we're here working on the knitting project. So tonight we're going to be finishing up our scarf, and I have made mine for my niece. So it's a little bit smaller than like an adult scarf. And tonight what we're going to be doing is it's called binding off or casting off. So we're just going to be closing all the stitches so that the scarf doesn't unravel. But first I wanted to show you that I've been knitting for probably 2 years now, and even I make some mistakes. You can see here where I went a little bit off the pattern, and down here as well. And that's okay. That's part of what makes like homemade knitting so beautiful, in my opinion, because you're not only creating something for someone you love, but you're putting your time, your energy, and your love into it, but you're also putting tiny mistakes that they wouldn't necessarily get, and they may not ever see them, but it's just another testament to all the time and effort you put into it. So last time we talked about the knit purls. So as you can see, these are knit stitch, and then this, here as you go in, this is the purl. So that's that sort of ribbing effect that you get, that knit two, purl two, knit two, purl two, and that's that ribbed. But then here towards the end, what I've done is I've knit for several rows because now I'm getting ready to bind off. So I don't have very much yarn left. And that's going to vary depending on how much yarn you started with and how long you made your scarf. So I personally, like I said, I knit one for my niece. So it's going to be a little bit smaller than it would be for myself. So it doesn't fully wrap around my neck, but I have a pretty good idea that's going to fit her. So I knew to stop when I needed, when I had just enough left that I knew I could cast off. You never want to play yarn chicken. That's when you knit right to the end and you think that you're going to have enough yarn, but sometimes you do run out. So I always like to suggest leaving a little bit extra, like more than you think you're going to need to bind off, because there's nothing worse than being halfway through finishing your project and realizing you only need 4 more stitches worth of yarn and you don't have it. So to bind off, we're going to start with a simple knit stitch. So in through the back as per usual, loop around the back as per usual, off the needle. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go into the second stitch, same way, around knit, and you're going to slip it off. But now you have those two. So there's just a question here. If you run out of yarn, can you attach new yarn to your creation? You absolutely can. So for example, if you, I'm going to finish this and then I'll show you how to, actually, no, I can show you now. So if you say that this is the end of my yarn here and I still need to finish this much more, what you could do is you could tie a small knot attaching a new piece of yarn in either the same color or a different color if it's just a couple stitches and you don't mind. And just tie a simple knot and then just keep knitting. Or what you can do if you know that you're going to run out of yarn. So for example, if you're halfway through your scarf and you've already used up one ball and you want to make a super long scarf, so you need a second ball of yarn, you can actually hold the yarn double for a time like this. So you have one from the new and one from the old, and just keep knitting. And that way it'll just naturally work itself into your knitting. You just want to make sure that you do it for enough stitches, not just 2 or 3, so that it's really woven in, and you won't actually see it in the finished project, but it will help you get that extra yarn. So here I have the 2 stitches that I've moved on to my right hand needle. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to take this, my left hand needle, and I'm going to loop it underneath that first stitch that is on my right hand needle. And I'm going to pull it over and over that second stitch. So just to show you guys that again, I'm going to go back. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to go all the way back so that I can show you from the beginning. So to cast or to bind off, you're going to go into the stitch just like a knit stitch, around, over and off, around, over and off. And once you've got those 2 stitches, this is when the binding starts. So I'm going to take this stitch, the one closest to my hand, and I'm going to pull it with my needle. So sort of like this, over the tip, and I'm going to pull it around that second stitch. And then I'm going to go in and take another stitch so that I have 2 again on the first needle. And I'm going to pull it over. And what you're doing is you're sealing them. So it's kind of hard to see because it's a light color, but you're sealing them so that they won't unravel. So again, you're just going to go in and around, just a simple knit stitch. And then you're going to take, I'm going to try to show it a little bit better. You're going to take this, the stitch closest to your right hand, and you're going to pull it over the tip of your needle and around so that you only have that second stitch left there. So again, cast another stitch on, take that first stitch, loop it around and onto the needle. So I'm just going to do a couple more. Let me know if anyone has any questions, because I know this can look a little bit weird. But as you can see, now that I've done a couple stitches, you can see that sort of seam where it's not going to unravel and it's actually a closed project. So that's how you cast off, and you just keep right on going till you get to the last stitch. So that's what I'm going to do quickly here. And we'll put a video up afterwards as well for you to watch this stitch on YouTube in case you can't quite follow what I'm doing, because I know it's a little bit tricky to see backwards on the camera. So over and around, and then that first stitch goes over again, pull a second stitch on, first stitch goes over the needle and off. So it's 2 stitches on, the first stitch goes over the needle, and then just let it go. So put a second stitch on, take that first stitch, pull it over the head of the needle and let it go. I hope that you guys are able to see this clearly and that it's not too confusing. So you're not just dropping the stitches. What you're doing is you're actually pulling them over one another so that they can't unravel. And I'm sure that there's a technical term for that, but I don't know it. But see, you can see that closed seam where there's no hanging yarn. I can pull on it and nothing comes loose. And just when I get to the end here, I'm going to show you how to tuck in that last bit. So we're just going to keep right on casting off. And again, you want to keep a nice even tension. It can be really easy, especially if you're nervous about making mistakes, to get really tight in your stitches. And again, that makes it a little bit trickier. So just try to relax and enjoy that you're almost about to have a completed project on your hands, and that you'll be either able to wear it or to gift it to someone that you love. So here I'm almost at the end. So for my scarf, I did 50 stitches, and I counted those out, and because I knew I was doing a slightly smaller scarf, 50 stitches across was more than wide enough. And I even think I could have done 40 because it is quite wide. It's about as wide as my hand. But that's entirely up to you. Once you know the basic knit and purl stitches, you can make all kinds of things. It's just a matter of getting those 2 stitches down to really get the basics. So here I'm coming to the end. And as I said, I made sure I didn't play yarn chicken with myself. So I have enough. And that scrap yarn later, sometimes if I have enough bigger pieces of scrap yarn, I actually work them all into a scarf so they don't go to waste. But if it's only a tiny bit, you can throw it out, or you can make a keychain. You can do all kinds of different stuff with that, but you don't need to worry about it. So we're almost at the end here. All right, so here at the end, I have just a couple stitches left, and you're doing this right to the very last stitch. So I have one stitch on each needle, and I'm going to go in to the back of the last stitch, around, same as before, and now I have 2 stitches on my final needle. I'm going to pull this here, if I can show you this way. So here you have those 2 stitches. I'm going to take this front stitch, the one that's closest to my right hand, and pull it over the exact same way we've been doing with all of the stitches as we bind off. And then what I'm going to do is put my needles down. And so I've got this finished edge of my scarf. However, now comes the question of what do we do with this, right? I've got all this extra yarn, and how do I keep it from unraveling further? So I'm going to take this, and right around where this stitch is here, I'm actually just going to tie, and there are lots of different ways to do this. This is just how I prefer to do it. And I just tie a simple little knot where that stitch was. And then, of course, I don't have the scissors that I thought I had up here. So then I'm actually just going to take this where this is a loop, and I'm just going to give it a quick snip. And now I have, and also, so then I have this whole piece of yarn here. I'm just going to, again, trim that off because I don't need it all. And I have these 3 pieces of yarn that need to be tucked in for me to finish my scarf. So this is where you take your wool needles. These are the ones I have. Because this is a thicker yarn, I'm able to use the slightly thicker needle. And as you can see, it has that sort of clear hoop. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of the yarn and put it through the hoop and pull it through. And then I like to give it a bit of a twist just so I have some more leverage. And I'm just going to wind it into my work. So the way I do this is I try to wind it into the stitches that are already there so that I'm not disrupting my pattern, and it's really not going to be visible to the naked eye once I'm done. So I just go along, and you can sort of see this as you work. Like, you can go in so many different directions as you weave it in. But there's kind of a natural sense to it, and you'll get that. It depends on every project. You'll be able to see where you can tuck it and there won't be much visibility. And again, if you make mistakes, it's not the end of the world. That's part of the beauty of homemade projects. So now that this piece is all woven in, I'm actually going to trim it right close to the project. So as you can see, I'm careful not to cut the project, and this is just discard. And I have 2 other pieces that I'm going to tuck in the exact same way. And then we have 1 piece towards the other end of the scarf that needs to be tucked in. But I will do that here shortly. So, and again, I'll post a YouTube video of this as well, so you can see this a bit more close up, because I know it's hard to see it backwards. So that one there is nice and secured. Again, I'm just going to cut it close to the project, but not cut the project itself. And one of the last ones here. So this little corner might, like, if you feel it, might feel a little bit thicker than the other corner because it has all the ends woven in, but no one will ever know why, and it's highly unlikely that anyone will be like, hey, this corner is really thick, because it's so unnoticeable. So here I've got my ends all woven in. I'm going to trim this one again, and then I'm going to show you the corner. So this is my corner here where I wove in the ends, and as you can see, you really can't, you can kind of see my knot right here, but you can't really see any where the ends are in because I just wove them in along with the style of the stitch. And then you have your one end where you started. So you can trim this down to a short as long as you need it. If it's really long, you can give it a bit of a trim. But it's the exact same thing. You're going to take your wool needle into the loop. I like to give it that twist for leverage. And then I'm just going to go in along with the stitch pattern to get that tucked away so that 1, it doesn't unravel, and 2, it has a nice clean edge. So if you see here, I'm just going in with the pattern of the stitches. So as it goes in, you can't see where it just kind of disappears into it. And that's how you ideally want to tie in your ends. So this one here is all done. And again, I'm going to take my tiny scissors and I'm going to cut close to the project, but not cut the project. And there we go. We have a little scarf made for my niece, complete with small mistakes that no one will ever notice, that, you know, went a lot of love and time went into. So if you have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, that is beginner's knitting, if you will. So you learned a knit stitch, a purl stitch, how to cast on, how to cast off. And yeah, if there are any questions, I can take them now. Otherwise, I will make sure that the YouTube links come up for you all afterwards. Okay, I think that we're good. So yeah, I hope that you all enjoyed your knitting and that you enjoy your new scarf or enjoy gifting it to someone you love. Thanks. Bye.